It's Monday message. Today, my message is all around supporting your child or student who has an ADHD diagnosis. I am a really big advocate of this. I'm not sure if my community knows, but I had a diagnosis of ADHD myself at the end of last year. A lot of people tend to say, why so late? Why did you bother? I think for me, it was really helpful to understand how to support others by also supporting myself. And I think I've always had such a want and need to help neurodivergent kids because I feel that you can't understand the way you learn until you understand the way your brain works. And that's really important for teaching and being a parent. So today's message is all around supporting your ADHD child. So if any of you have listened to the guru on ADHD, Dr. Russell Barkley, or if you haven't, you really should. One of the things that I think is most important for us to reflect on with ADHD is his theory that a child with an ADHD brain has a 30%, well roughly, 30% less, their emotional age is 30% less than their actual age. So if we think about this, we call this the executive age or their executive functioning age. Now, to understand this, we need to know what executive functioning is, and I'll explain that in a second. But basically what we need to know is that if you have a 10-year-old child, their emotional brain is of a 7-year-old. If you have a 16-year-old child with ADHD, their executive age or their emotional functioning age of their brain is actually 11 years old. This is really important. But first, what is executive functioning? Now, many of you may understand it, but the way I teach it to my students is how I want to explain it to you. I often explain it to them that in a school, we have teachers who teach us and support us, but then we often have the executive team. And I talk about what does that executive team do in a school. They're your assistant principals and your principal. We talk about all of their jobs, and their job is actually to make the school function and run. So that's exactly what executive functioning skills are in our brain. And here's some of them: impulse control, emotional regulation, time management, working memory, focusing, planning, organization, goal achievement, stress tolerance, and self-restraint. Now, if you think about those things and think about an ADHD brain and their executive functioning, how are we going to expect a child to do the tasks of their age if their executive functioning age is 30% less than what their real age is? Okay, so that's a little bit difficult to process and sit with. So here's what I want you to think about, and this happens constantly in the classroom, and I know it happens in the home because it's happened to me in my home with one of my children who has ADHD. When we set our expectations on our child to do and complete tasks that are appropriate to their age, we are setting ourselves up for frustration, conflict, and disagreements. Because if I say to my 14-year-old child, I expect you to have your room cleaned, I expect you to make your bed, bring all of those dishes down, fold your clothes, and take the bins out, for example, we have to remember that that 14-year-old child is actually functioning at an 11-year-old's brain. So if that's the case, would we also expect that of an 11-year-old and to not get frustrated by the amount of tasks and the order in which they have to complete them and being able to control their emotions around it and, focus on it and task analyze what they need to know? Likely not. When we ask our ADHD child to do these tasks and have our expectation at their actual age, we are bound to create conflict because we are setting our view as the expectation, which might be here, whereas their view is their reality and they are unable to do it. This builds frustration. We get frustrated that they can't, won't, or refuse to. They actually get really frustrated because They don't understand why we can't understand that they are unable to do it. So you're going to ask me, yeah, well, that's great, but how do we manage and support that of our students or our children? We actually have to lower our expectations. We actually have to make adjustments. We have to adjust our expectation, not them. They are working with the brain that they have, and they are unable to do these things, not because they're being disrespectful, disobedient, they're just lazy. These are the labels that these kinds of kids start to get. They're actually unable to. And when we make that adjustment in our own head, then we can start to support the brain they have, and they can learn and achieve at the level that they are. Last tip before I finish up. When you're wanting to support them, you have to think about, what is it that I would expect of this child at their executive functioning age? So if I had a 16-year-old, what am I going to expect of a 12-year-old at this age? So that when you actually set their chores, their responsibilities, and their activities, it's based on that ability to be able to succeed with the skills that they have at the executive functioning age. I hope this helps, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share. I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you next week.